No, the boys, man, we started, and like I told you before, we pressed play. It's just no script. So we've just always
Yeah.
pressed play. We did that when we first started the podcast a few years ago. We did that and we made an agreement because I felt like if we didn't do that, then I would not listen to your answers. So we would avoid
Right.
conversation. So I would just be waiting to ask the next question. And
Yeah.
I think we took that no script lifestyle a little too far because now we have no script workouts, no script heat and ice,
Oh yeah.
no script. I don't even know how to set up Zooms, which I do. I could, but he's just,
Yeah.
no one's better at it. So everyone stays in their lane.
Keep it going. I like it. No, yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, so
Love
hey,
it.
thanks for joining us.
Did you-
For those who are listening, we have Tuffy Gosewisch with us today. So Tuffy and I talked. Was it last summer? I think it was last summer.
I believe probably last April or May, I think was the first time we talked, and Orf, our mutual friend Nate Orf,
Yeah.
hooked us up, and Orfie and me are always trying new training methods, and we had kind of started doing some Wim Hof breathing
Yeah.
together, and we got the team on it, and then we called you during a rain delay actually one time, and we immediately went and did some hypoxic training out in the rain on the field, and almost passed out. So that was fun.
Yeah, that'll
But
put you down.
oh man, it was. And then we got on a bus and drove for 4 hours. So we were wide awake for that bus ride.
No, man, I think, and I told you this last summer, I think what you guys did last year for baseball, just absolute pioneers. What you guys did and brought guys together in an environment of professional sports to tie in something as simple yet profound as breathing, and then just buying into people wanting to be connected and do that together as a unit. I don't know if that's common. I mean, I played pro ball for a few years. I was done in 2015, but I don't remember anything being that cohesive,
No.
and I'd never seen anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, that's a great place to start. I mean, we can touch on that, and then I'll peel into you a little bit. But what was the experience like that last summer of you guys kind of pioneering that and quarterbacking that sort of culture at a professional level?
So it was last year was something special and something I've never been a part of, where we had a few guys that were all on the same page. Me,
Yeah.
Nate, Tyler Saladino, and then we had Jake Hager, and we just had a few guys, watching what we were doing, and they were like, "The hell are these guys doing out there? They're laying out in the outfield,
Yeah.
at 1 in the afternoon, just breathing, and it looks like some sort of cult out there." And so we got a lot of questions, and then we just had a bunch of guys buy in and test it out, and I think we really kind of built a bond through that, and we were able to become closer, and just the whole team kind of just latched on, and it made the team experience that much better. And I think the breathing is something that is new to baseball,
Yeah.
and I feel like baseball is always a few years behind as far as when training goes, and
Sure.
I think they get stuck in their old ways sometimes, and they're not willing to try something new or try something that's outside of their comfort zone. And that's just something I wanted to constantly do, is keep pushing my comfort zone and see what I can do to become better. And to be totally honest, like physically, and I'm not I'm not that special, and I need to do everything I can do to keep playing. And I think this is something that nobody is aware of in the baseball world, that
Yeah.
the breathing is just huge, and just having an awareness of how much of a difference it can make, I think, is surprising to guys.
Yeah, man, and it's cool to hear from you too, because you're not. I like how you kind of, because I agree, baseball is sort of, it has trouble catching up sometimes. It'll get there in time, right? And it needs to happen
Right.
through
Yeah.
what you guys were doing and those sort of things. But you've also been playing professionally for many years. And
Yeah.
I know part of your story, but I want to hear it from your point of view, and especially those who are listening. So, because that'll tie into why that's so cool, that what you just said, because it's not like this was year 3 for you. I mean, you've seen a
Right.
lot of
Right.
evolution of professional baseball. So, I mean, just overall, man, how has your career, if we start even before professionally, sort of take us through the cliff notes of the timeline of where you've
Okay.
been, how that's gone, and then get to where you are now, and that'll serve good platform to dive even deeper.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. Played high school ball in Phoenix at Horizon, then to Arizona State after that. played at Arizona State from 2002 to 2005. Did pretty well there. And then we went to the College World Series once. And then I got drafted by the Phillies in 2005. Went to short season, and then I gradually worked my way up. I had some speed bumps along the way. I was not a prospect whatsoever, and so just really had to fight for anything I could get and any playing time I could get, and it just took me a long time. And so 7.5 years with the Phillies, and I never made it up. I got to play, and then the agent ended up signing with Arizona that year, 2013. Was in AAA and played really well. And there was an injury in August, and I got called up August 1st, 2013, 2 weeks before I turned 30.
Yeah.
And my ninth year of professional baseball. And I was up with the D-backs all the way through 2015, and then half of 2016. And then since 2016, I've bounced around with a few teams. So after that was the Mariners and the Nationals, and then last year with the Brewers. So 15 total seasons so far.
Congratulations, man. How epic is that you did that in Arizona?
Thank you. Oh, it was unbelievable. I can't even describe it. That feeling you get when they tell you you're going to go to the big leagues, and then I call my family that night, and it's just, tears running down everybody's face. It's just, you can't describe it.
Yeah, it's epic, man. It's epic. And that's sort of why it was good for you to lay out that timeline, because like you already said, and we've already acknowledged, baseball you've seen now for almost 2 decades, which is insane. And then to make it to the big leagues after a decade, there's a lot of stuff in there. So the thing that I was really excited to get you on the podcast, but also our conversation, I mean, anytime we've had exchanges of conversation, they've been really fun, right? Because they've been thought-provoking and just good questions, both ends. I've learned from you, and hopefully vice versa, and that sort of stuff. But
Definitely.
But people who play a really long time in any craft, not even sports necessarily, people who sustain a really good presence or performance, they're really in tune with themselves, right? And that's where I've been really fascinated to watch you from afar, is because you want to look at it as, well, wouldn't the ultimate goal come down to understanding your own personal nature at a mental, emotional, physical level? And that's why I'm alluding towards. I've had fun talking to you, because you ask very deep, intuitive questions, and then you also try a bunch of stuff. And so it's just cool. I want to kind of, what triggered you to do that? Have you always had that, or what has been the curiosity of your own performance and seeing what you're capable of?
I think that it probably started when I was in college, and my coach was Pat Murphy. He's not one to sugarcoat anything. And so basically he's like, when you get to pro ball, nobody's going to believe in you. So you're going to need to do everything you possibly can, because I've had you for 4 years and I know how good you are, but you need to continue to try to improve every single day and get better and show these people how valuable you are and how you can be. But I think that that's probably what kickstarted my mindset. Is every day I wake up, I'm like, how can I get better today? And what can I do? Even if it's something small, how can I improve today, and constantly be trying to become the best version of myself? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And I think that probably is why I have that mindset, is because I'm like, well, if I can't be my best version, then I'm not going to get to the big leagues. But now it's carried over into every aspect of my life. Now that I'm a father, husband, anything I do, I'm just like, if I'm at the sink washing the dishes, I'm like, I'm going to wash the shit out of these dishes. And so it's like, why not take the opportunity you have in each moment, like be present in that moment and try to do the best you possibly can do. And then when you're done, you're going to have no regrets, first of all. And, things are going to continually improve and get better and allow you to really enjoy each moment.
Do you think that, because something that I've really pondered for a long time is that And when I was playing, it didn't make sense to me, but I would be taught, mental performance or just being, I've kind of tailored it. I just call it human performance because I agree with you. If you're going to do anything, just do it.
Right.
Cleaning the dishes is just as important as taking a good warm up swing, whatever,
Right.
and
Right.
so I don't look at it as a singular thing of mental performance or physical performance. It's just human performance. And so the point I'm making is that when I played, everything seemed very specialized, not as a player, but even as a coach. So there was a specialized coach for mental performance, physical performance, hitting, and all this stuff. Now, the thing that I remember questioning on my own was, how am I only working on mental performance for just pitching? And there's such a small room for growth, whereas like it's almost like you should develop that mindset of cleaning the dishes because that would make you better at hitting. That would make you better
Right.
at playing the field, whatever it is. And do you think that comes with time, or do you think that people need to see that earlier? Like, we need to acknowledge that human performance is an overall arching balance of life instead of just your specific sport.
I think that people definitely find it, the older they get and the more experiences they have. But I
Yeah,
think that I would have I would have embraced that when I was younger had
sure.
I understood the impact that it could have.
Yeah,
I don't think that people or athletes especially understand that the human performance aspect of it. Like, just because you're getting better at something away from the baseball field doesn't mean it's not going to help you play baseball,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, if I'm going to go out and just read a book, like, reading that book and staying focused on that book as long as I can, and being in the moment and present and understanding everything that I can, that's going to translate to the field also of
Yeah,
my focus, my concentration, my ability to stay calm, things like that. And just like, so like a lot of guys are like, why do you do the cold tub so much?
yeah,
Like, what is the reason you get in the cold tub? I'm like, well, it's not because, it helps me recover. Like, I think the number one reason is if I can approach the cold tub like I want to approach the rest of my life, calm, under control, slow breath. If I can approach the 38-degree cold tub that way,
yeah.
then that's how I'm going to approach everything else in my life.
Mhm.
And so if I can come to the field every day and I can be in a big situation in the ninth inning and I can have 72 heart rate
Yeah,
and be calm, then that's the goal. So
yeah.
that things like that completely translate to playing sports. And I think a lot of times, coming back to your original question, is, you know, people get too specialized. They
Yeah.
think that if I'm not practicing this specific sport, then I'm not going to improve in that sport. I think that you're spot on where you need to just have overall human performance.
Was there a time in your career where you weren't at that? I mean, there had to have been a time in your career where you weren't able to articulate it like that, or that,
Yeah,
well, what was
no, without a doubt.
it's so fun to ask this to you because you're still in that mindset and you've played for so long. So you've had such history to pull from, what was a turning point in that, or was that a gradual process? I know you already mentioned that it comes with time, but sort of take me through how that happens.
Um, so I would say out of college that I was still very, focused on just baseball
Yeah.
and not understanding the entire human performance aspect of it. But I think as I got into pro ball and, you know, I had a full off season and things I could do in the off season to try to get better, I realized that there's a lot more out there for me to improve.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in college, we did have, Harvey Dorfman, one of the original mental
Oh yeah.
skills coaches.
Yeah.
He was close friends with our manager, Pat Murphy, and so he would come talk to us a couple of times a year, and I had an idea that there was more to it than just baseball. And so I got into, originally, I wanted the physical side. I wanted to get as strong as I possibly could and as
Mm-hmm.
fast as I possibly could. So that's what I focused on originally, my first few off seasons.
Yeah.
And then I started to realize, well, it doesn't really matter how big and strong I am. And I'm not very big and strong, either one or fast. So I was like, man, I better get better at something else, and I better improve somewhere else. So then I started focusing on every other aspect of my life and
Wow.
really trying to become, as good as I could in other areas, but also I would just notice things that were going on. So I'd go to spring training with Philadelphia, and it was the first time I'd really seen anybody get into a cold tub that was like lower than like 50.
Sure.
And I would see Chase Utley, and he would get in the tub, and it was like, it was water, but it's filled with ice.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just like you like it, where it's like, okay, there's still tons of ice in it and
Yeah.
it's not melting. So I'm upper 30s. I'm
Yeah.
upper 30s. And nobody else on the team did this. And I was like, why is Utley the only guy doing this?
Yeah.
And so I would notice certain things, or like Roy Halladay, he would come to the park every morning in spring training at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. And he would do his workout, and he'd be done with his workout at 6. And I'm walking in
Yeah.
like I thought I was early.
Yeah.
Damn, 6 a.m. I am early. And Halliday's done with his workout, and he's eating breakfast, and then he would throw his bullpen at 8 a.m. And I'm like, Roy, like,
Yeah.
why are you throwing your bullpen at 8 and you've already crushed your whole body? He's like, well, I want to pitch in my bullpen like it's the 8th or ninth inning of a game,
Wow.
and I'm already fatigued. And if I can mentally be locked in for this bullpen when I'm already this tired, then I know that when time comes in September and I really need this 8th and ninth inning, it's going to be there for me.
Yeah.
Man, that's a different mindset.
For
So
sure.
I think that just gradually being aware of what's going on around you, I think that's part of the biggest problem now, is people are so oblivious to what's happening and not paying attention. If you just pay attention to the people and the things that are working really well,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna learn something. Just try to ask yourself questions like, why are they doing this, and
Yeah.
why does it work, and will it work for me? And so I don't think there's one turning point, but I got one more answer to this long ass
No,
question. But
this is awesome, man.
um okay. But when I was with Philadelphia, my whole focus, I was just like, I got to get to the big leagues. I got to
Yeah.
get to the big leagues. And I never did. And so I get to Arizona, and I'm in AAA, and I'm in Reno, and I was having fun, and we were a good team. And I was like, you know what? Like, I've played 9 years now, and I'm in AAA. And
Yeah.
if I don't play anymore after this, like if this is my last year, then you know what? So what? I did everything I could.
Wow.
Um, I tried to be the best player I possibly could. And if this doesn't work out, then so what? Then I move on.
Yeah.
And no joke, about a month or two after I had that realization, I got called up.
It's awesome that you say that, man, because I have a lot of conversations about that with guys now, and I'm on the other end of it, and I'm around, however you want to see it, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm around a lot of people who are outside of baseball, and you see, or football or hockey, whatever, you see they're transitioning, and when you look at that, it's like that's either very miserable to a person or it's very peaceful. Right. And it never really it's never has really anything to do with how their career went, whether they made it or didn't make it, which is really fascinating. And then the comprehend what you just said, how many people would get such more success if they could have that realization. But the hard part is, you're not in there you were in there for you had so much time now where it's kind of like, dude, I've done everything I can. And it's something where, you play and also see guys who are in their young 20s or people who you play with as teammates that you got to put your arm around. You have for people who don't understand professional sports or professional baseball for that matter, I mean, you're controlling guys who there's financial stuff that's in and out. There's people who are very young, very talented. There's injuries. There's people who get moved around. You know how all that stuff works. How do you look to help people come to that realization earlier as a teammate?
Wow, that's a good question, and
Yeah,
it's tough to do to
sure.
as a team to get guys to realize that. And um, you know what? Lately, it's probably just been I've been reading for the last 3 years about I know you have too,
Yeah.
about Stoicism
Oh yeah.
and Ryan Holiday and things like that, and I think it's been huge for me to be able to just tell guys like, look, there's only a few things you can control,
Right.
right? I mean, you can control your own mind, your own thoughts, and your own actions. How hard you work, your attitude on the field, and your preparation. And once the game starts, I mean, there's a dude out there throwing the ball at you at 95 miles an hour. Like, you don't control where he throws it, right?
Right.
All you can control is what is given to you, or how you react to what is given to you, right?
Right.
Like, I control my response to
Right.
what's going on around me. And so I think that if guys are, constantly caught up in the struggle of, oh, I got to do this or I got to do that, I just try to be like, look, you know, you don't control that. You don't
Right.
control the moves the front office makes. You don't control who writes the lineup. All you control is your actions and your thoughts and the way you come to the park every day.
Hmm.
And if you do that to the best of your ability for the rest of your career, then that's all you can do.
Yeah. Well, it becomes very peaceful too, and then
Yeah.
you allow your mind to become creative because you eliminate space. The thing is, you go back and forth between control and not control, but the thing is, if you can just focus on the controllables of anything, and the Stoics do a phenomenal job because the Stoics, like, that's their thing, right? You live
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
accordance with nature, and it's very simple. It's either in your control or it's not. They don't really waste any conversation outside of that, which is what makes it so
Yeah.
fun to read, right? But
Right.
then what I've noticed, and I love, because I think I probably came to it in that same time frame. I kind of dove into Stoicism in the last 2 to 3, 4 years or so in that same frame. But it's the same thing. What you realize is that when you eliminate everything like that, your headspace gets opened up, your creativity gets opened up, and you start thinking of things that you couldn't think of when you're overstimulated by worry or past regret and all these sort of
Right.
things. And so now that kind of leads me into wondering how, because you do unique things as a baseball player, whereas, I mean, I built a company out of unique training. So it's, to me, it was, hey, I just kind of made a brand of this is how I train, right? But you do it in
Yeah.
an environment with tradition, with different cultures, backgrounds, different voices. People are always trying to move up and all these sort of things. And you've been able to do that. So you've obviously been able to control your own mind, your own thinking, and your own attitude. But where does that curiosity come from? Not just baseball related, but what makes you so curious to understand your own nature, to see what you're capable of in terms of your human potential?
I'm not, I can't give you a good answer for where it comes from.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I think that a lot of it has to do with, your youth
mm-hmm.
growing up.
Sure,
That I was constantly encouraged, to
sure,
be curious and uh, keep learning, and an older brother. And so I feel like that helped, where I was always watching him and what he was doing, and like, man, can I do that?
yeah,
I want to try that. I want to try what he's doing. Um, and just constantly pushing myself. And I can't give you an exact reason of why that is, but I think that it's something that started early, and then um, just gradually it grows and grows as you get older. And then I think once you're probably, late 20s, early 30s, you start to realize, like, okay, I don't have a whole lot of time left.
right,
Like,
right,
hopefully hopefully I hope people start to think about their mortality a little bit,
for
because
sure,
then it makes your experiences that much more valuable.
for
And
sure,
it's another Stoic philosophy. Memento mori is just another thing where just think about your mortality. And
yeah.
it shouldn't be something that's sad. It should be something that really motivates you and gives you extra life, and makes all your experiences that much more valuable.
Was there well, now I keep asking the same question in a different topic, but was there a moment where I have the memento mori coin, I'm staring at it right there.
Yeah.
But
I got one of those in my room.
yeah, they're beautiful, man. And actually, a good buddy of mine, hockey player, gave that to me. That was playing hockey overseas. Awesome dude, and he gave me that before he took off a few years ago because he was in his 30s. I'm just thinking, I wonder if that's what made him so intrigued to go get us those coins. But he was late into his career,
Right.
still playing, and he handed that to me before he left, which was a great gift. But
Awesome.
I agree with that, obviously. But at the same time, was there a time where you had a difficulty reflecting on mortality, or did that hit you? Has that hit you differently over the years with that concept?
When I was younger, I probably didn't even think about it
Right.
ever. I
Right.
mean, like not even like almost like, all college kids, like you're never gonna die. Like that's not
Right. Right.
that's not even a thought in your head. And so, before I started reading a little bit about Stoicism, I probably, if I thought about it, I probably tried to stop thinking about it as
Yeah.
fast as I could,
Yeah.
because it's just it's not a comfortable thought.
Mm-mm.
You're like, oh, I'm going to miss all this. I'm going to, what's going to happen when I'm gone? I'm like, well, things are going to go on the way they've been going on
For
for,
sure.
for thousands of years. But I think that probably the moment that I really had that realization was when I started reading about it. I was probably 32, 33 years old. And I just started reading a little bit of philosophy, and I ended up, stumbling into Marcus Aurelius and then
Yeah.
Ryan Holiday. And then
Yeah.
it's, from there, it's just continued to roll. But I think the first time I read the memento mori thing, I was like, wow, I mean, it makes sense, And so I haven't been afraid to think about it at all now. And
Yeah.
I think it's something that's really hard, though, for me to get other people to think about, like to talk about it. I have a hard time getting other people to think about it the same way as I do. And so
Yeah.
that's something I've struggled with.
That was my next question. I was gonna ask you is because Stoicism as a philosophy would make perfect sense for an athlete, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree.
And I don't know what that world's like in terms of, and you just sort of answered it, but is that not something that's talked about, or Stoicism, is that not something that's approached in a locker room? To me, and maybe it's just because I follow or talk to people like yourself, that it seems like it's very relevant. But
Right.
you have a better grading on that, or grasping on that. So is that not something that's well versed or discussed in a clubhouse?
I mean, it is discussed. It's not like something that's discussed very often, but
Sure.
I think what happens is, like I'll have a book in the locker room and somebody will ask me about it, and then I'll talk about it, and then they'll
Sure.
get curious. And um, I think that there's been, I keep saying his name, but like Ryan Holiday's made Stoicism so much more accessible, I think,
Yeah.
to people. And I think that, the obstacle is the way is the ultimate minor league baseball book.
Yeah.
And so, um, I think that every minor leaguer is like, oh, Jesus, like I need this book.
Yeah.
And every person, I've bought probably 10 copies and handed them out to people.
That's
And I think
awesome.
that I've had a lot of, good feedback. And I think that people will think about, oh, I'm not going to read Marcus Aurelius like it's, 2,000-year-old. It's called Meditations. Like,
Right.
I don't meditate. And I'm like, no, it's not about meditation.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. It's like
Right.
just as relevant now as it was then, probably more so.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it gets talked about. It's just not a huge topic. But I'm definitely open about it. And if somebody will ask a question, then I won't shut up about it.
Right.
So they'll probably don't want to ask me questions, but I love talking about it. But the clubhouse is guys are curious, and
Yeah.
if they're interested, then yeah, we'll have a talk about it for sure.
Yeah. The clubhouse is one of the most, I mean, that's one of the most epic breeding grounds of conversation known to man.
Yeah, you can't replicate it. You can't replicate it.
No,
And
you can't.
most of the conversations probably shouldn't leave the clubhouse either.
No, that's why I'll keep it there. No, well, so think of this as yourself, because obviously I love this stuff, which is why we've connected, and this conversation is fun to just dive into it from my own, to listen to you speak on it. But do you ever find yourself being tested in the professional world because of you wanting to try these sort of things? Or like, I'm trying to think like Chase Utley, you know, there comes a certain time where you have so many years, or maybe you have such, you know, pedigree, if you're like a Roy Halladay or any of these sort of things, where it's kind of, well,
Right.
no one's going to tell Roy Halladay not to come in and do that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you know how that works. It could be a little bit different if you're a rookie or those things. But then at the same time, what's so fascinating to me is that in professional sports, everybody is trying to get to that level, right? A trainer, a coach, everybody is. And, you know, so because of that, you get a lot of ego. So I think of it as ego's the enemy in Ryan
Yep.
Halladay's books. But I'm just looking at you, you know, how have you learned over the years, and it's a subjective question because it's just how you perceive it, but how have you learned how to control your thinking with so many different voices and egos in a room, yours included?
Yeah. I think that it's probably, I've probably fall back a lot on just like trusting my gut,
Mm-hmm.
trusting my instinct, and going, like I'll definitely try a lot of different things and talk to everyone about it, and talk to,
Yeah,
anyone that I think may have something helpful.
sure.
I'll definitely talk to them and, listen to what they have to say, and then I'll try it. And if something just doesn't feel right, then I'm probably just going to go back, and say thank you, and it, didn't work out, or just try what they did and it didn't work, and then move on from that. But I think that a lot of people don't really trust that about
Yeah,
themselves. I think that they second guess themselves, and they've almost lost touch with that part of their thinking, is
yeah.
like they they've gone so far in the other direction where they don't even know what their own trust in their own instinct is anymore.
Well, that's what the cold does, right? You know, and it's
Yeah.
I have a guy, I work with a guy out in New York, and we were just having a conversation this morning actually, and he had a great point, and we talked deep about this. I actually just had a webinar with Brian McKenzie, who I've talked to a lot over the last couple of years. We spoke last Friday and had a great conversation about this too. And you're saying it, but going back to the guy out in New York this morning, he talked a lot about getting to your own nature, which makes me happy because that's how we started talking. It's more so of how do you get to have your own awareness, because if you listen to any great speaker or read anything, it really does come to how you perceive the content or the material or your own process, your own journey, your own career. If you feel content with what you've done, well, now
Mm.
you've raised a perception of what you think is good. Now all of a sudden things become peaceful and you become
Yeah.
creative, and that's all great. But the hardest part about sports right now is the technology. Now, I love the technology, so I'm not saying that I don't like the technology. But I think that guys could have a lot of trouble getting to feel what you just said because they now have such technological responses or results that they're constantly looking at to make their
Right.
choice for them, that they
Right.
never understand their own nature. They never
Yeah.
understand how they feel, how they breathe, right? If you go into the cold and you can't handle the cold, more times than not, something's off in your life. Like something is out of balance in the way you're eating, sleeping, you know, something like that. If you can't control yourself in those stressors. So,
Right.
I mean, you don't even have to agree with what I just said necessarily, but do you think that we've gotten away from that own sense of self or that own intuitive or own naturistic feel because we have such access to answers that are outside of us?
Yeah. I mean, I think without a doubt we have. And the example that I can use is like, now if we're hitting like at the
Mm-hmm.
field and everything's measured offensively, and
Yeah.
so if you're hitting at the field and they got the hit tracks on, and you're like, oh man, you're in BP and you hit one, and you're like, oh man, that was nice, that
Yeah.
felt really good, swing felt great. And then you look at the hit tracks, you're like, oh, your exit velocity was down, and it wasn't a good launch angle, and
Yeah.
your bat speed wasn't what it normally is. You're like, well, now you're second guessing
Yeah.
yourself. You're like, but I thought that was, in my head, that was a really good swing. And I feel like that swing will translate to the game.
Sure.
But this, the hit tracks just told me that all my numbers are off. So I must have to change something. And I think that that's something that is constantly for me, especially now that I'm the old guy, is like
Yeah,
I'm constantly fighting the technology.
sure.
I'm trying to use it to my advantage, but also not let it overtake what I know I've already learned in the last 20 years. And so I think that's something that guys have to balance out.
No, I love that answer, man. And on the concept of learning, how, and you've learned so much, right? You've gathered so much information and you've kind of seen the evolution of technology come into the game, which is pretty cool. I don't know many guys who have that perspective like yourself. So, how have you learned how to keep learning?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a
Well,
surface level deep question.
it is. And like, I think that going back to like baseball, and baseball is a game of adjustments, right?
Hmm.
Like that's one of the oldest sayings in the sport. Baseball is a game of adjustments.
Yeah.
And so I think that to be good at baseball, you have to be able to adjust.
Hmm.
And I think that the guys that are really, really stubborn and refuse to adjust, I think those are the guys that have the issue,
Yeah.
no matter what they're doing. And so I think that's probably one way that I've learned is like in baseball, I've been practicing that my entire career. And so like you're constantly making these minor changes and minor adjustments. And so the understanding how I have to learn is, okay, do I like my job playing baseball?
Yeah.
Yes, I like my job. Do I want to keep my job? Okay, I want to keep my job. As long as it doesn't go outside of my ethics and,
Yeah.
things like that. Okay, what adjustments do I need to make? Okay, now I learn how to. So the last 2 years, let's use an example. I've had to relearn how to receive
Mm.
as a catcher
Wow.
because of the way that strikes are being called now.
Oh,
I've
wow.
had
Yeah.
so totally relearn the way that I read the baseball, something that I've done. It's been second nature for
Sure.
13 years of my career. It's all of a sudden it's like, hey, you basically need to do the opposite of what you were doing. And so, it's something that's like, okay, well, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do everything I can to be as good at it as possible. And because I want to keep playing, like my rationale for continuing to play is just when when I'm between the lines, am I having fun? Is this game still fun? Okay, well then I still want to play.
Yeah.
You know, once the game stops being fun, then I'm gonna hang them up. And I have no problem with that. But the game is still a blast, and so I think that's part of learning how to learn
Hmm.
is that you know one just understanding that I need to make changes and grow. I think that's the biggest thing is like life is about growth and how, no matter how uncomfortable it might be, you just got to continue to grow and there's going to be some pain involved. And I've almost come to the point where it's like I enjoy the pain
Yeah.
of growth because I know come out on the other side of it, I'm going to be better off for it.
Dude, that's awesome. That was really fun to listen to you break that down. I really appreciate that. That's an amazing breakdown. And it's really cool because, I look back at myself or people I've coached or people, that's so true. If once the fun aspect leaves any sort of platform you're on, not necessarily sports, you just stop becoming curious, right? And
Yeah.
once that happens, there's no interest in learning anything. And
Just going through the motions.
yeah, you go through the motions, and then it just happens. It kind of sparked me to ask you this because you seem like you'd have a great grasp on this, but you've obviously seen so many people go up and down, and you see the unfairness of sports and unfairness of baseball. You know, what I'm really curious to hear how you answer this one and take us through that rabbit
Great.
hole too. But how have you handled that sort of concept of watching people go up? Maybe I'm sure there's been. I mean, I know enough about the game to know that you've had times where people have gone up that you're pissed about it, or like I should have got a chance, or why am I not getting these things? And that's something that rattles a lot of young athletes or young players. And not even young, I'm sure it still gets to you, but it's some sort of management of mind or management of self. How have you controlled your emotional responses to things that are outside of your control? And you've already touched on it, but specifically in that category.
Right. Well, I got one specific experience I remember. 2012, I was in Lehigh Valley and I
Okay.
was in AAA. And July 31st, we traded for a catcher. And
Uh,
so I was basically out of playing time.
yeah.
So the Phillies traded me to the Blue Jays. So I
Okay.
was with the Blue Jays for 1 month. And that's when I became a free agent after that. But while I was with the Blue Jays, we were in Tacoma playing, and I read a story about the backup AA catcher for the Phillies had just gotten called up
Mm,
because multiple catchers in the big leagues got hurt.
come on.
And so had I been there, and I would have been called up in August
Yeah.
with Philadelphia. And so I was by myself. I remember this like clear as day. I was by myself. I had just gotten breakfast and I was
Yeah.
just walking down the street and I just had an absolute meltdown,
Oh, I
like
bet. I bet.
by myself, emotional meltdown, like crying,
Yeah.
like didn't understand why, like it'd been a long time, been 8 years, and I never gotten called up, and I
Wow.
just got traded. I thought I was going to a better position, a
And
better team.
yeah.
And then I turn around and look at this thing, and it's like I got absolutely screwed,
Yeah.
you know. But I got over that as just a momentary thing, and then I played that night, and I was fine. And but the reason I bring that up is like I didn't have the tools at that time to understand like that wasn't in my control
Mm.
whatsoever. Like that
Mhm.
was not in my control at all. Like, and you don't know. This is some Buddhist stuff right here, but like nothing is good or bad.
Right.
Like our perception of an event is what makes it good or bad, right?
Right.
The event is just what it is.
Yeah.
It's just you judge whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So so it ended up the next year because I had been with Toronto and I had played really well in AAA that Arizona had seen me and signed me that fall,
Okay.
which gave me the opportunity to be a Diamondback, right? So looking back on it, what I thought was something that was terrible
Ends up
turned
being.
out to be something really good.
Yeah.
But at the time, it looked like absolute, worst thing that could ever happen. And so that's one, I didn't have the tools to
Wow.
deal with it at the time about being in my control, like, and also the fact that like that event just is the event, and you don't know whether it's good or bad until later down the road.
Dude, epic. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool. You know that stories are like that. And when I was talking to my girlfriend about this a few weeks ago. We were out walking, and I said, anytime you talk to a professional athlete, it does not matter. There's a cool story in there. Because everyone just is. There's something that someone's done, or those types of things. And what I love that you're mentioning is the term tools, right? And it's something where when you're speaking and you want someone to have these things, or you've probably had to share that story with a teammate, and it doesn't matter what you say, so just for overall in general, because now you're a dad too, right? So you're having to raise kids and do these sort of things, and you've been playing around high competitors for a long time. What do you do with a situation where you're speaking to somebody and they don't have the tool, because you can't necessarily give it to them? You can give them that great
Right.
story. You could have told me that story while I was playing and said, do this, Harv, and you'd have been right, but I can't see it at the time or be aware of it at the time. And how have you managed that, even as not just an athlete, but as like a father?
I think that like you can tell someone something or you can try to teach them something, but I don't think you can force them to understand it or learn it unless
Mm-hmm.
they're ready
Yeah.
to learn it,
Yeah.
And so it's like with my kids, it's like my son is 2 and my daughter's 4.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to teach my son to do a puzzle
Yeah.
that my daughter can do, but he's not ready to do it yet.
Sure.
Like he's not ready to learn that yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a developmental thing, but the same is true later on in life with adults, where if you're mentally not ready to learn something or you're not willing to be open
Yeah.
to learning something, I think that's a big thing. Is like, so if I have a teammate come to me and they're asking me a question, they're obviously open and they want to learn something.
Sure. It's a great
Now,
point.
I And I think that if I were to try to force, um, if I were to try to force something on my teammates that I think that they can benefit from, but they're not ready for it, that the fact that I'm forcing it on them
You'll lose them.
might
Yeah.
backfire, and they might go the other direction.
Yeah.
So I know that I need people to be open to whatever I'm telling them before I even try to help them out.
Kind of comes full circle on the terms of how you guys had such a great culture at a professional level. You just
Yeah.
you're not forcing it, and you let
Right.
people attract to you believing in what you believe in, and people want to have that sense of self, or the way you were acting. I want to have that control, that emotional control.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be cool because we take every guest through this, and when we first started Mind Strong years ago, it was actually a lot of this conversation. I was again curious about everything you're saying, because what
Hmm.
you're saying right now, I would have loved to have thought like when I played, which I would say
Yeah.
most people would say that, and you probably would say, I wish I thought like this earlier,
I
and
wish I thought like this when I was 21.
right.
That would have helped.
Yeah, and we could have that balancing conversation all day every day. Now, my curiosity as an entrepreneur in the beginning was, well, I want to figure out how to figure that out. Like how does
Yeah.
this guy have this, and then how do we get the 21-year-old and then give him that and
Yep.
decrease the slump or decrease the time of recognition, if you will. Now, I still think that's a subjective task. I don't know the answer to that, nowhere near it, but the goal of it was to develop what we called the diamond series. So just like a baseball diamond, right? We'd take you around home, first, second, third, looking at home plate being your purpose, first base being your standards, second base being your systems, and then your vision, sort of kind of coming around that circle and asking
Yep.
yourself those questions. And it's always cool to ask everyone who comes on the show for us, but when you think about yourself, Tuffy, now individualize it as that father or an athlete or just yourself in general and what you do, physical fitness, mental strength, and physical strength, all those sort of things. When you think about your why now or your purpose now, I sort of break that down into how do you identify with yourself? How do you service other people? And then more so, what are you willing to struggle for? You've already kind of talked about the importance of that pain. In the moment now, from life to this moment, not that it has to be a concrete answer, what is the thing that you find most meaningful to struggle for that gives you a sense of purpose?
Um, right off the top of my head, it's like helping, like trying to make other people as good as they can possibly be, and
Awesome.
understand that, that that it really frustrates me. I don't know if frustrates the right word. It's confusing to me why people are willing to just settle for surviving
Yeah.
as opposed to trying to like thrive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my and that is something for me, is like, as a father, especially as a husband, like I want my family first of all to thrive, and like I want to help other people realize like how great they can be, and that there's so much out there that, you know if you're just aware of certain things and tools that you can use, like we talked about, to become a better person and become, the best version that you can be. I think that you know if I can say in 30 or 40 years that I've helped a lot of people realize their ability, and realize that there's uh, a chance for them to become greater than they are, then then my purpose will have been fulfilled.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And to carry that down to first in terms of the standards or values that you put in front of yourself so that you can uphold that, right? Because obviously, as you know, you got to have some sort of juice to give out, right? You got to have
Yeah.
some energy sources to be able to fulfill that. So when you think about like your standards in a mental, emotional, or physical bucket, what do you have to do, Tuffy, in terms of setting yourself up for that sort of success or that sort of purpose
Mhm.
driven lifestyle? What's sort of I mean, obviously, I'm sure you adapt it all the time, but what's sort of the checklist you go through that puts you in a position where you feel your best?
Um, assessing each situation I'm in, or where I'm at in my life at that time, and
Yeah.
what is what is um, what is the best that I can do in that moment.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and constantly, asking myself that question is like, is this the best that I can possibly do right now for where I'm at? Not expecting, to be the best at anything. Obviously I would like to be, and definitely not expecting to be perfect at
Right.
anything, but am I doing the best I can with what I have available to me right now? And that's not always going to be an ideal situation, but just looking back, or not looking back, but looking at where I am in this moment, and like, okay, this interview, like, it's not perfect, but is this the best that I can do now with what I have and the tools that I've honed up to this point?
Yeah. Yeah, that's nails. That's nails. That's a great way of looking at it, And so when you kind of fast forward it, and obviously we kind of look at systems of just goals and habits, but what I'm most curious about is what keeps somebody. Obviously, I believe in the moment, and it sounds like you do too, right? Of executing the moment, dominating an interview like this, or a conversation like this, or your training step by step. But keeping that carrot out in front of you lives
Yeah.
as an excitement thing as well, right? It's kind of that ambition to get to the big league someday still made you go through all that adversity, right? And you
Right.
just kept moving
Right.
through it. And so then you get there and you got to make it better, right? What I've found is that your vision's never, it needs to always be out in front. You never really hit the peak of the mountain, right? And stop. So it's
Right.
when you look at yourself in the position you're in now, and you can answer this however, right? But what's sort of the thing that keeps you excited? What's the thing that keeps you moving? What's that carrot out in front of Tuffy?
It's, I'm not sure exactly what the next step is. As far as baseball goes,
Right.
the next carrot is definitely um, to continue to play and get back to the big leagues. And um, you know, it's a definitely uphill battle right now, but
Yeah.
that's where I'm at in my career, at least. Is something, you know, something to look forward to, is like the opportunity to get back to the big leagues, and that's my carrot that I'm chasing at the moment. But as far as personally, it's having a household where I have kids who feel like they're loved, and
Yeah.
a wife who feels like she's loved, and that's all I can do each day, and be able to, um, no matter what I'm doing as far as the job goes, is working to make that a possibility for them. And uh, you know my goal is just to be able to allow them to realize when they grow up how great they can be,
For sure.
and continue my goal is to continue to carry on that curiosity that I have, and give it to them.
Dude, that's awesome, man. It was a lot of fun to break it down with you and hear from you, man. But I know before we kind of tie in at the end for people who are listening, I know you do a lot of other things too outside of baseball. Is there some ways people can find you, or what people who are listening, some of the things that they can reach out or see anything that you're doing or follow the path that you're kind of going on as an individual?
Yeah, there is. I'm on Instagram, just at Tuffy Gosewisch. I'm on there, and that's, I'm on Twitter also, but I don't really do a whole lot of Twitter. But I have a website where I created just a couple of blog posts so far and a couple of videos, but hopefully can do more with that. It's called trulyunstoppable.com, and so that's kind of my mindset, is like, what is truly unstoppable? What does that mean for each person? I think it's different because, uh, in my mind, all it is like, no matter what happens, you continue to try to be better. And, you're going to get knocked down, and just see if you can always get back up no matter what. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, that's kind of my goal. Trulyunstoppable.com. I have, and, other than that, just hopefully can, watch me play some baseball at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah, Yeah, that'll be the big one, right? That'll be the one I'll be pulling
Yes.
for too. But so, hey man, I know we'll continue talking and keep checking in with each other and pushing each other and those sort of things. I'm extremely grateful that we've even been able to do that for the last about a year now. So that's been amazing, my man. But from myself, and there's a lot of other guys involved in Mindstrong, but from myself personally, thank you for the time, dude. We try to tell that to everybody. I really try to emphasize that's the highest currency of leadership, right? Is giving away that time. And you're a guy that in the middle of the week, training, family, and a lot of stuff that's going on, to be able to set aside time and talk to us is amazing, man. So I'm super grateful for that. And more so than anything, I thought it was really fun listening to you talk about being a human. I think this would be really fun to share for people who would listen. And you're a good man. I'm really appreciative that I was able to cross paths with you and learn from you. And it's been really fun getting to know you, man.
Thank you, Harvey. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you for having me on, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to continue to learn from you. And you're probably going to be sick of me contacting you because I got a lot to learn from you. And so you're going to be wanting to wish you had a different phone number pretty soon.
Well, that's the curiosity bit, my brother. So we'll just keep it rolling. So, all right. Well, hey, we will sign off and enjoy the podcast, folks, and go check out Tuffy. But thanks again.
Thanks,
Cheers.
brother.